Coming up on episode 63 of the Upful Life Podcast.
Switchblades, cocaine.
It's been 7 years since I, smoked weed. And like, maybe it's been 9 years since I shot dope. And maybe it's been 11 years since I was addicted to heroin. You know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like I haven't bought drugs in a long time. I haven't hidden drugs or had drugs and so sometimes I read the email like I'm my dad or something. Because it's a little bit like that. Because it's also when people talk about the human body regenerates all its cells in 7 years or something. It's I'm a totally different person.
Right.
But I still and sometimes I feel like they think I'm a fraud because I have clean time, which is funny. But I still am entertained by that shit because I know the places that we go.
I'm a bozo. Oh, yeah, I thought you had it. You recognize it. I love that. Many people like him.
Let's drink a toast forever and ever. Let's drink a toast forever and ever.
Yes, indeedy. Welcome to the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, gov't, and this is episode number 63. Coming at you live and direct from the Vibe Junkie studio in Oakland, California. And bringing this year into the station 2022, you know how we do. So grateful you are tuning in.
But I ain't the same. Everything's different. I can't complain. Don't know what you missing. Shame on you. Yeah. Shame on you. Everything's strange. That's just a game. Everybody.
Yes, indeedy. We're back, episode 63, Upful Life Podcast. Woo! So grateful. Made it to the end of the year and squeezing one more in just before the clock ticks on 2022. Shout out to everybody who reached out on the last pod with Dan Charnas, author of Dillatime. Man, that was a joy to do and to put out, and the reception, much like Leah's song before him, really empowering, encouraging, affirming, and I give thanks and a deep bow to everybody who enjoyed that pod and let me know and shared. And I encourage everyone to get Dillatime the book if you were intrigued by that dialogue. It's just so much deeper than just hip-hop or even music. It's a cultural anthropology, which is a turn of phrase I've employed quite a bit recently. And with that, I do want to let everybody know I really appreciate the reviews, the ratings on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Please, if you have the time and are so inclined, please rate and or review the Upful Life Podcast. It goes a long way to shifting and sending those algorithms in this direction, bringing us new listeners, new ears, new souls, and that is a good thing, my friends. So give thanks to everyone who has done so in the past and continues to. I see you, we appreciate that. And speaking of being appreciated, the way that people have turned out and supported my 6th annual Upful Life Favorite Records and More, the 2022 edition, which dropped just a few days ago on upfullife.com. It's the big article right on the top of the page. Slide through, check it out. Is a deep dive, the deepest of dives. 22 plus album reviews, 22 more record recommendations, honorable mentions, if you will. 22 singles, songs, mini EPs, 22 plus DJ sets and mixtapes, and a handful of live releases, both official and bootleg. It is my labor of love to the people, to the culture, to the artists, to the creators, to the entire cauldron of music communities that are really like the battery in my back to do what it is I do. Again, that's on upfullife.com. 6th annual Favorite Records and More, the 2022 edition. And you can support that and everything else I do by clicking the support button right there at the top of upfullife.com. In addition to supporting, rating, and reviewing, you can also hit me up directly. Send me an email, b.gets@upfullife.com. I love to hear from the people, feedback, suggestions, reflections, constructive criticisms, the whole niner. So if you're feeling like you want to shoot me a line, please do not refrain. I really appreciate it. And again, the email address b.getz@upfullife.com. And I just want to take a moment. I've been doing some reflecting myself, both for the year-end compendium that I referenced, and of course I made it a point to stop by the homies podcast, Almost Familiar Pod, which I was on once before. I highly recommend you check that pod out. Very cool interview-based podcast in the music community. Shout out Wes, shout out Elizabeth. I went on with them for like 2 hours, told my whole life story. That was a couple years ago. But I slid through with a little 5-minute roundup of my favorite of this year, festivals, music, events, things I'm looking forward to, etc. So check that out, Almost Familiar Pod. And also I want to shout out the Weird Music Pod and my man Cam out there in Ohio. They had me on earlier this year just to kind of give a 411 on what it is I do and my space in the music community, and kind of called me the 60 minutes of podcasting, which I thought was, or music media, which I thought was quite the affirmation and a compliment. So shout out Cam. Check out not just my episode, but Cam's had a incredible list of guests, that many of whom have been on my show, many of whom I'd love to have on my show. People have really been showing me a lot of love, supporting what I do, and I just want to pay it forward and let people know about the next generation of cats, because both Almost Familiar Pod and Weird Music Podcast, those cats are like at least 15 years younger than me, if not more. So it feels good to be connected with the youth. Teach the children well, as they say. And frankly, in a lot of these situations, I'm learning as much as I'm teaching. And that's what it's all about, a symbiotic, free exchange of ideas and lived experiences and hopes and dreams and all that good stuff. I want to shout out Live for Live Music. I mean, without them, they're the rudder, the anchor, the engine between a whole lot of what I do here. Exposure-wise, the ability to go to events and, chronicle the culture behind their brand with my pen. I mean, the podcast wouldn't even be possible in such a way without the support and affirmation and empowerment of Live for Live Music. So shout out Kunj, Sarah, Andrew O'Brien, James Sisler, all the peeps, Michael Browerman, all the peeps out there that make that happen. And I'm going to do some more cross-pollinating with Live for Live Music in the podcast, because that needs to happen. And what I was getting at before is you can support what I do, even though Live for Live Music does take care of me. I do a lot of stuff pro bono or just for whatever comes back to me on the support tip. So this is me with my hat out a little bit. And I know a lot of listeners right now are from the Dopey Nation. They don't listen every month, so you can do with it what you will. But to my day ones and my people out there, I just ask you to please, rate, review, support, share, and if you can, kick me down a few dollars for making you holler because I really should get paid for doing this wild thing. And with that, let's get into episode 63 of the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, gov't. Yes, indeedy.
I've been stressing every moment. Yeah, keep it on the side, I need to open. Yeah, see her on the side when I'm open. On that, she be telling lies on the phone shit. Hey, I've been slipping, need to focus. Yeah, please don't tell me where that dope is. I might drop the old road shit. Drop the old road shit. I got dark gas lenses, toxic gas friendships. Pop my first perk, high school freshman. Skip a midterm for a mixed down session. Mix the up and downs, always going both directions. Know that I'm insane, but this pain got me stressing. I'm getting brain while I whip the intersection. In the circle tight, gang I'm quite impressed with. I played the game, I got a check up on my left wrist. Checkmate, your queen asked me for the guest list. Not a king, cause the crown will leave you headless. Long night, I'll be standing where the bread is. Long night, never gonna get some rest in. Driving past my own shit, yeah. Lately I'm on my own shit. Lately I'm on some grown shit. Lately I'm on some grown shit.
Yes, indeedy. It is my honor and privilege and pleasure, of course, to bring back to the Upful Life Podcast my man Dave from Dopey Podcast, now going by his government, David Manheim. One of my big inspirations as a podcaster and also a dear friend of 4-ish years. Now this pod interview took place in Park City, Utah back in September, the Park City Song Summit, so it is a couple months old, but it's evergreen and really as pertinent as possible right in the here and now. I was just thinking about Charles I, who you just heard and will continue to hear during this episode, passed away 55 weeks ago. Just acknowledged the 1-year anniversary, and of course I played some Mac Miller earlier, and it's just the creeping death of the fentanyl generation. It's not lost on me. And naturally, Dave from Dopey Podcast is the master of ceremonies and fearless leader of the Dopey Nation. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dave is co-host of the Dopey Podcast for many years until his partner and co-founder, Chris, died suddenly 4-ish years ago. It was in the summertime. And he came on this show shortly thereafter. Several months, but it was in the wake of that. Dave had been on This American Life, Wartime Radio, episode 667. Highly recommend you check that out. It tells the tragic and resurgent tale of the Dopey Podcast. And Dave came on Upful Life episode 33, which holds the title as the most downloaded episode. I mentioned on Dopey when we recorded in Park City that he had fallen to second place to Jake Rakitansky from QAnon Anonymous, and like the Dopey Nation, is an army, better yet a navy. They swarmed like an armada and retook top honors as the most downloaded episode, and I hope they turn out again for this one like that. But now I've been listening to Dopey since like the episode 60s or whatever, and it's been every Friday night Yeah, I don't even know what they're in the 400s now. Dave is, and the podcast has transitioned a bunch, and he has 8 million plus downloads. There's a Dopey Con, kind of Super Bowl of Dopey that goes on an annual basis in New York City, where Dave is located, and he's a quintessential New Yorker in every way, from Katz's Deli to the Knicks Stannery, to his taste in hip-hop, to his lived experiences, although he did spend some time in Los Angeles. And frankly, his life story and his journey is really what we cover in the initial episode of Upful Life, episode 33. So we kind of pick up from where we left off in a lot of ways. Plus, Dave's been a dear friend to me for the past few years and shepherded me through stuff and has been an ally in helping my friends and family, and I like to think I'm a friend to him. So this is a very personal episode, and many of you who listen to the show already know or remember me in real life when I had a serious OxyContin addiction. No two ways about it. And I've been open and honest about it on this podcast and with the people in my life and with myself. And I cannot overstate the role that Dopey and Dave has played in the we're at like 6.5 years of abstinence from opiates of all kinds, save for kratom, which is not technically an opiate but is part of my solution. But Dave feels differently. He abstains from all substances. I do still enjoy cannabis regularly, kratom, psychedelics every now and again. So we have different approaches to skinning the cat. Dave had like almost 2 decades of heroin addiction, IV heroin addiction, and lots of other hard drugs. That's not my lived experience. I was a pharmaceutical opiate addict, which was just legal heroin. And now that we're in the fentanyl era with the fake Roxys and fake Oxys and fake Xanax, strong as doses of fentanyl masquerading as other substances, there's a lack of consent. All this to say that, I have the affliction and the disease of addiction, and my drug of choice in that regard was OxyContin, and really pharmaceutical opiates of any kind. But once I got with the Oxys, it was game over. And, I nearly died a couple times and took going to jail and a whole lot else to get me to the other side of that darkness. And again, Dave is a huge part of that. Even though we only met for the first time the weekend you hear this conversation going down. I leaned on a lot of what I've been able to get from listening to Dopey, from participating in, the Zooms and the conversations, and I used to be in the Facebook group a bunch, and just from back and forth with Dave, and just like the way that Dopey has exposed me to recovery and the alt recovery movement, and like seeing myself as in recovery, even if I'm not in total abstinence. And I got to shout out my man Axel for bringing that to light. He was actually the first person to explain that to me, like directly, and it was like a bomb went off, explosion of understanding in my mind, and that has really served me well in service and counsel to others. And I'm not advocating for my way, I'm just saying that's how I roll, and it's working for now. I also do still have troubling regular relationships with substances, though they are not illicit or, going to kill me. At the same time, it's not the same as Dave's reality, who's been abstinent from all substances for like 7 years or something. But then again, his level of addiction was far more extreme than my own, and his best friends and podcast partners are dead. And some of my friends are not here. And some of my friends are still alive and made it through the other side, abstinent or otherwise. And the point of this whole diatribe, and the reason that Dave's coming on the show, the reason we have a relationship, and the reason that I am called to make an episode like this one and to participate in this dialogue in a macro sense, is because there are many ways to skin this cat, and it's about living, and then it's about quality of life, And it's about tomorrow not being promised. And every day we're getting news of another passing. And like I said, you know, whether it's my heroes going back as far as Shannon Hoon or Jerry Garcia, you know, all the way up through the recent tragic, excruciating deaths of Mac Miller or Charles I or even Prince. And that's what keeps me alive, and I've said it time and time again, is the fear of death because of the fentanyl era. The fear of death keeps me alive, keeps me out of the tenderloin, keeps me doing what I'm doing right now and not doing what I was doing for so long. And on that note, before we get to Dave, and if you're still with me, I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who stuck with me through all that darkness. I just got married. The podcast is popping. My written work is at its zenith. I have amazing clients, my heroes, the bands I love and adore, like pay me to explain their art in the written word. And it wasn't that long ago that I was strung out or in jail, lying, just a complete shell of a human. And like a lot of y'all did not give up. And I'll never forget that. And that's why I'm doing this episode with Dave and just participating in this conversation, this dialogue, this world of a drugs addiction, recovery, and dumb shit. I just want to introduce my man, David Manheim, Dopey Dave, Dave from Dopey Podcast, Dave of Dave and Chris. We miss you, Chris.
Sunny out tonight, I'm chillin'. Everybody worried the lights might kill him. Be a sight slipping. Long lines of those white women. I'm with the homies, bump town crows. Just went through a half ounce of coke. Blood pouring all out my nose. Don't tell my mom I got a drug problem. I'm fucking high. Leave other side. Sun go down, I come alive. Cause the guns go off in the summertime. Guns go off in the summertime. Blow. This another motherfucking rap song. Broken, crazy, rich claims doesn't last long. And all my cash on the broken drain. Went from weed and liquor to the coke and lean. All I got is tension in this potpourri. But don't I look so handsome in these polo jeans? Don't I look so handsome in these polo jeans?
All right. Well, the people asked for it, they clamored for it, and it finally happened. We're here in Park City, Utah, this Park City Song Summit.
Yup.
And we've got some trucks in the background, but I'm here with the one and only Dave from Dopey Podcast, known as Dopey Dave while we're here, which I know you hate.
I hate that.
I know. How did you let that happen?
I told him no. I said no Dopey Dave, and they keep, dude, fucking at that first one, what's his face? Ben introduced Dopey as the Dopey Dave podcast.
Oh my goodness.
That was rough.
Yeah.
But tell me, B, when there is a genie, let's go inside. It's gonna make you crazy. It's gonna fucking make you crazy. It's not gonna stop.
Oh yeah, they're setting up a load-in. All right, so loading dock and truck and all kinds of noisy activity outside. Dave here made the executive decision to relocate into my palatial estate.
It's bananas. If you want to compare and contrast, they put me in like some dingy fucking room in the basement next door, next to like the water heater, like and like I hear trucks all night and shit. Begets is in the motherfucking serious suite, not like some fake bullshit suite, but the full leather couch, the fucking matching chairs, the kitchen with island, full stove, upright fridge, and that's just the beginning. Beautiful bathroom, dining area with 5-6 tables for a banquet if he so desired. Fucking on the back, the real deal, full-sized hot tub with cover and picnic area.
You got it. Dave, you could be a real estate agent.
Dude, your shit is fucking bananas.
I said it was the Rick Ross suite. Like when you open the door, it says Maybach music. You know what I mean? It just feels like a total.
It's like
opulence.
MTV Cribs. You
Yeah.
should do a fucking Park City Cribs episode.
You know
You should
what?
come to mine. There's an ironing board out in my shit. My shit is like the fucking ghetto compared to this spot.
That's weird because, as I said on Dopey, by the way, Upful Life listeners, I'm on
Dopey episode 375.
375. I come in after the great Jerry Stahl of Permanent Midnight fame. So for those of you who don't remember, Dave here is the co-founder, co-host of Dopey Podcast, and he's been on the Upful Life podcast, one of the most downloaded episodes, and Dave and I have been friends through Dopey Podcast and just podcasting in general for like 4+ years. And when I say friends, I don't just mean like likes on Facebook. We talk on the phone, we text each other, we talk about our own lives, we help each other with our podcasts. And Dave's been a real inspiration to me as a podcaster and as a guy moving through recovery and sharing the service and the gift with others. And we happen to be at the same event in this bumblefuck place neither of us have ever been to. And by the way, Park City, Utah, bumblefuck in the best kind of ways. It's in the middle of nature. It's breathtaking. We can go
It's
on hikes.
bumblefuck with lots of money, though.
Yeah.
It's expensive bumblefuckery.
Yeah. It's just a place that I never came out to before.
Have you been here before?
No.
It's bananas.
I've never been to Utah at all.
I stepped in a corner of the Four Corners on one of my cross-country trips. But you know what I was thinking was when we started talking, shortly after Chris died, when on Dopey, I started my beef with Vice. And B didn't like that I wanted to do this big beef with Vice. And I was really interested in why he didn't like my beef with Vice. And I loved the beef with Vice. But I remember that's where we started talking.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I would have never remembered that as the embryo. I do remember those conversations and just,
I was in beef with, what was the song? The show is called The Dope Sick Nation.
Yeah, right. And my whole thing is just it felt like WWF, like scripted, like corny Twitter kind of
Which
beef.
is why I liked it.
Right. It was good for business and it was good for exposure, but I come from like journalism and like integrity, you know.
Yeah.
So like this is corny, but at the same time I understood it for exposure. And the bottom line is that show feels exploitive and yours doesn't.
Right. Well, the thing about the Vice beef was Chris had died, right? Chris was dead. And Dopey didn't have a lot of fun in it. It hurt to make for a little while. And the Vice beef was fun for me. Yeah. So I needed absurdist fun. And that's why I was so excited about it. And it didn't necessarily come out that way, but it was something that I like stupid shit like that.
Yeah. No, I get it. And when you frame it like that, I almost feel bad that
you took away my fun for a second.
When you were in the darkest place. So, again, for those listening, we're not going to go through all the same stuff. I'm sure Dave might tell a story or two that he told on the first pod. I didn't go back and listen again, and I know he didn't. I'd recommend everybody do so, and especially if you can before this, because when he's talking about Chris, he's talking about the fella that he created and founded Dopey Podcast with. The podcast is about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit, but eventually it became about what happens after that, which is recovery or death. And with Dave, you have recovery, and with Chris, you had recovery, and now you have death. And Dave has persevered through not only Chris's passing, but passing of his best friend Todd, who some of my listeners might know from Fish Tour, great dude. And Dave's kind of lived this nightmare every Friday for however many years.
Almost 7 years.
Right, doing the pod for almost 7 years. And
Yeah.
with Chris, without Chris, separated from your family, reunited with your family, having a new child. Like, you've lived your life in recovery and redemption in a very public way. And it's been like a just absolute privilege to be a listener, to just have the ability to listen to what you share, but also to be your friend. And that's what makes this so special here in Park City, because after all this time and all these years, and I've tried to come up to New York, it hasn't worked out, blah, blah, blah. Here we are. Wives aren't here. We're both here in like a work capacity.
Professionally, and yet enjoying ourselves anyway.
Exactly. It's really organic and perfect. And for those of you, Dave is actually like legitimate talent. His wristband says artist. So he might be making jokes about his accommodations, but his name appeared on the program 3 times. And to be honest, like, I took a measure of pride in like how you were received, presented, just your incorporation in an event like this. Now I know you've done like kind of like a sober themed country music thing in Virginia. Was it? West Virginia?
It was blue. I think it was more like bluegrass. It was
Okay.
the Healing Appalachia Festival.
Okay.
They actually invited me back this year, but it was not nearly as plush as this joint.
Right, but I'm just saying, so that was kind of your entry into the crossover between music festival / mental health, wellness, recovery. But this is like really kind of Venn diagram. It checks a lot of boxes. You've been a busy guy networking, so I got a lot of questions. We're going to start with, how do you feel about Dopey's like legitimized in this context now? It's about drugs addiction and dumb shit, but now you're up there, you know, hosting panels, rubbing shoulders with like trauma, addiction, mental health professionals, and this was some ridiculous podcast that your partner like made you take off the internet in the beginning because of its absurdity.
I made him take it off the internet.
Okay.
Or Linda made us both
Right.
take it
Well,
off
that's
the
what I
internet.
meant when I said your partner.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
she's not actually your wife.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm with you. Yes.
She
100%.
It was so ridiculous and so preposterous and embarrassing that she made you take it off the internet. And now you are really interacting, commiserating with the creme de la creme of professionals in this field. So talk about the legitimization of Dopey.
Number one, thank you. Like, that makes me feel really good. Number two, it's like, I'm such a fucking self-sabotager. It's like, it's absurd. Like, shit is going so good. It's like, if I was just a little bit different, I think I didn't do that, by the way.
No, we're good.
There's scratches on the table that B is examining, but I was not scratching
I wasn't
up the
looking
table.
at that. I was looking at the levels.
Oh, and it's like, it feels so good, and yet still I somehow deprive myself the joy through sheer fear, self-centeredness, fucking worry, neuroses. However, I know that today went really well, and I know that like I connected with a bunch of people here on a level that was a little like schmoozy networky, but there was a lot of like real friendships formed, and it felt awesome. And the panel I got to do today was with Anders Osborne, who I'm a fan of his, and this kid Wyatt Pike, who's an up and comer, who was American Idol finalist or something, and it felt good. And I feel great. It's so cool to be in it, except that they call me Dopey Dave all the time. Besides that, it's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. It's funny, every time I hear it, I'm like, oh man, that's gotta ruffle your feathers, because they've called you Dopey Dave a number of times, and you're on the program as Dopey Dave.
Not on the program.
No?
On
The app. On the app. You're on the app as Dopey Dave.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, why would they do that? I told them not to do that. It's like, I think that, I don't know why they would do that.
I mean, it's 4 less letters if they're crunching numbers. If they don't want to pay for the Dave from Dopey.
Well, it's funny though, because when I went on Maron's podcast, right, I had always kept my last name off the show, and Chris wanted it to be anonymous, and I was fine with that because, like B said, it was an absurdist fucking podcast about shooting heroin, kicking, horrible shit that we had done. So we would bleep our last names. Last year I went on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, and I said, are you going to use my last name? And he's like, well, unless you're a total fucking idiot, yes.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And so my last name.
That was a great Maron answer. I mean, that's where he's on the money.
Yeah.
And it's so
Yeah. And he's like, and so my last name is Manheim, and now like my dad's last name is out there, and my kid's last name is out there. And I said to them, when originally we did this thing, I when they set up the Park City Song Summit, it was before the WTF thing, and I was still like kind of doing Dave from Dopey. Afterwards, I said, you could just call me Dave Manheim, or you can call me Dave Manheim from Dopey. And I think Ben really liked the idea of, Ben Anderson, who set up this festival, Summit, really liked the idea of Dopey Dave. And I never would have been Dopey Dave if Chris had lived. It never would have happened.
Right.
It wouldn't have been Dopey Dave and
Because it was
Dopey
Dave and
Chris,
Chris.
right? And like, how would you live with it if it was you? Would you embrace it?
At this point, yeah.
You would embrace it.
I mean,
How?
honestly, well,
Dopey Dave.
I know. I mean, because
Could it be worse than that? I think Anders Osborne was like, that might be the worst nickname I've ever heard. I think he said that.
It sucks because, like, the average person is not connecting dopey to dope to heroin and then, like, making that connection. They're thinking...
Dopey the dwarf.
This guy's just,
this guy's a fucking idiot. Dope.
Right. So that sucks. But the flip side of it is it's excellent branding. Because instead of David Manheim, from who? Who's fucking David Manheim?
Right.
Dopey Dave. Oh, that's that fucking drugs addiction.
Right.
So it kind of works.
Do you think, so you're saying I should embrace it?
Well, you don't have it, if you can't control it.
I put it down every time someone says that.
I run SportsCenter. You can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it.
Right.
That's how you got it. You can't, it's out. You're Dopey Dave. So you can only hope to contain it. So make it yours. You know what I mean? Or... Put the kibosh on it. Send a press release.
No. I think what I do is just constantly do shtick how much I hate to be called Dopey Dave, because that works.
Yeah,
it's kind of a curmudgeon-y kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the bigger answer is it has been an incredible. This experience has been a really special experience.
I concur, and this is not about me, but I'll say that this has been very validating for me.
Right, and you got to interview some of your favorite people.
Yes. Big interview while I was here, rubbing shoulders with the Jay Blakesbergs, Peter Shapiro's, so it's a big deal for me too. And also just to be seen and recognized for the work. And actually that's what I was going to put to you is like, you're being seen and recognized for the work that you do. So it's transition from like, for the yucks, like Dopey in the beginning was literally for the lulls, laughing at yourselves. Right. And now it has become, we know what it's become. We're going to talk about it. We talked about it the last time. And that's what I was actually going to say in there today, if I didn't have to dip out to go to Blakesberg thing when you asked for questions with Anders Osborne and Wyatt Pike, was how much you've been able to affect so many lives in this. And I know you you roll your eyes and you're self-effacing and you're too humble, etc. So I'm just going to put it out there. Like, I know for a fact, I've talked to people, I have friends through the pod.
The community.
I've counseled.
You're in the community.
Yeah, but I've counseled people, and I've been counseled by people in Dopey. And for you to have, like I said, legitimized or elevated what you do as Dopey Podcast, I think that it really speaks to, like, a sort of like a niche that you're the only one in there, because there's a gazillion recovery podcasts. And there's lots of fucking, like, dudes telling fucked up stories podcasts, whatever, like from the Jake Pauls of the world, like that stuff's out there. And you sort of, like, harnessed a little bit of each and injected Dave, the guy from Cats, is the Knicks fan, the quintessential New Yorker with the dad, like, your shtick, all of it. And you never compromise. Like, I know you're always really self-aware of, like, what do people think? But you never changed who you are and what you brought to the show. You've evolved, you've matured. You're not like maybe the same guy that you were when you started the pod, but you're still Dave. And as far as the Manheim thing goes, I could take this a bunch of ways, and this kind of comes back to me because I was like, I don't want to tell some really dark shit on your pod because I'm on my government name. And I had a dark dozen years with opiates that I've talked about on my pod. I talked about it on the episode with you on my pod, but your pod is macro. You just celebrated 8 million downloads.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily need every last person to know the depths of my despair. So I get where you're coming from when becoming David Manheim, whether it's through Marin or whatever. But whether it's the alt recovery movement or removing shame or like making the dialogue of substance abuse disorder destigmatized, then what the fuck are we running from? You're David Manheim. I'm Brian Getz. Like, this is our story. We lived through it. Our service is telling our stories and doing the work and, like, put our fucking names on it.
Yeah, for me, it's like, you tell me all that stuff and it makes my heart just boom. You know what I mean? My heart booms, and it's like, the fact that Dopey has helped a lot of people, I might roll my eyes, but it's only because I never want to be in a situation where I'm put on a pedestal or anything like that, because what I've gotten back is just so powerful. Like, it's been so meaningful to me. And it almost makes me want to cry. I mean, I didn't sleep enough, so I feel very emotional.
You can cry.
But
I've
like
cried, 3 times since I've been here.
when I think about what's been lost, you know, when it's my friends, and it's like they were my really, really close friends, and all these other people that got help from it, it's like the price we paid is so high, and I'm so happy that anybody can get anything from that. And then when people get something from that, I get so much from those people. And, you know, 8 million people listen to it, whatever. I don't think any of them are here. You know what I mean? Like, I am so proud of the work, and I'm so proud of our community, and I'm so proud of, like, the people who like the show and the people who get something from it and understand the purpose of it. But, like, it does so much for me on so many levels. Like, I work at Katz's Deli, right? I always wanted to be in a band that had merch and was cool and whatever. And I remember, like, my boss is this guy named Jake. He's like, I think he's in his early 30s. He owns the most famous deli in the world. And I wear a Katz's shirt basically every day. And I see people wear the Katz's shirt. And sometimes I remember I'd be standing on the corner with Jake, and somebody would be walking by wearing a Wilco shirt. And I'd be like, you see that? You see your band? You know what I mean? And so the fact that Dopey is my band, it's like, it's very satisfying. You know, and it's funny, I don't want to wear a Dopey shirt, though.
Right. Well, the dude that wears his own band t-shirt,
right.
It's kind of...
Right.
Especially when you're, like, there for Dopey.
Right,
you know?
right. You're like a camp counselor or something.
I'm debating whether to make Upful Life merch.
You
and
should.
If I do, well, people have brought it up, and I would like to, but I just got to figure out the numbers and see if it's worthwhile and all that stuff.
You
but,
just make
hey,
it for the fun.
I don't know. I'd love to. I mean, it started as a clothing company. Upful did. It was not my idea. I just kind of got involved at the genesis, but that's another story for another time. I wanted to go back to what you were talking about with, like, the cost. I don't want to make you cry, but
I like how you zeroed in on the emotional aspect, though.
Yeah, I mean, Alicia, my partner, says that the real gold in the podcast is the vulnerability. You know, just like whoever I'm talking to, when she says when the guest is willing to be vulnerable. But I'm not trying to push her buttons so much as I lived that with you, you know? And I, in my own way, like thousands of others, loved Chris. Mm-hmm. And to a lesser extent, Todd, because he was only on here and there. And when he was kind of like...
a mess.
Yeah. And strangely, he's the guy I saw myself in on the show.
Of course.
You know, his trajectory is not unlike mine. And that actually leads me into what I was going to say. Survivor's guilt. So, like, I know that several of my running buddies did make it or are still in the thick of it.
Right.
And guys and gals. And I'm talking about from the Vermont days, from the Philly days, from the Florida days, and even one or two out on the West Coast. And, you know, it took me going through, you know, jail and getting off oxys and all that stuff to come out the other side and enjoy the blessings that I've been afforded or earned or been bequeathed to me, right? But there's some survivor's guilt, right? There's some, why me? I mean, I did some fucked up shit over the years, karmically, and you might think, well, I paid for it by going to jail, losing my dad while I was in there. Maybe so, maybe not. But I carry that. And that's, I think, the one, like, tinge on my shoulder when I'm worried about, like, how strong am I good? It's survivor's guilt or just guilt in general. I know you have a partner, 2 young daughters.
Yeah.
Your hands are full with cats and Dopey. Does that creep in still all these years later? Do you have survivor's guilt from Todd or Chris?
No, I don't. And I don't think I ever did. And I think the only reason I don't, there's only one reason that I don't, and it's because I work so hard at recovery. You know, my recovery work is paid off in my recovery. And it's like a fucking 1-to-1 ratio. I do recovery work. I have a new sponsee who's in Phoenix House. I talked to him before I did anything today. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so invested in meetings, in sobriety, in being connected to people who are struggling, that I know the only reason that I'm sober, it's not like luck. It's strictly because I fucking work my ass off at it all the time. And Chris was like the most sober person I knew. And like, when he stopped working, He fucking fucked up and died. And I hate that happened, but it only happened because he stopped doing the work. Straight up. I mean, like, he might have not died because so many people get to use and not die. Right. So it was fucking horrible that he had to be so unlucky and die, because he could have just as easily... They were drug testing him the next morning.
Right.
He could have just as easily come up negative, gone to rehab, and come back and had another chance. Right. But I don't feel guilt, and I feel sadness. I feel loss. I feel overwhelming sadness and loss on a daily basis. And it's funny because every summer, Todd died in June, and Chris died in July, and his birthday is in August. And every summer I honored those months. And I don't listen to Dopey very often. I don't even listen to it when I'm dealing with it, but this summer I listened to a bunch of shit with Todd and Chris, and it's painful. And Chris, like, the thing with Chris is, the weirdest part about Chris is that I only really knew him when we made the show. Right. It's this tiny little period of time that I knew him, and it's all documented in the show. So like it's like I knew him in there, but I didn't really know him before there at all. And I certainly don't know him after there. Right. And it's weird.
If I stop doing the things, which I've done, that help me, that sort of center me, I immediately go back to that baseline restlessness, irritable, and discontentness. And if I do that, I can only make it a matter of hours, weeks, months, until I pick up a drink or a drug. That's the longest I can last on my own willpower. So I have to replace it with something else.
I think that's important to the story, is that you didn't have this long-standing friendship, right? There was like ships passing in rehab, right? You were at a rehab, he was at a rehab, you connected briefly, and then down the road, very early in your recovery, he was a bit further down the road. And
we were relapsing back and forth before that.
Okay. But
never used together, though. Never.
Okay, interesting. So, yeah, we walked through it deep on the last episode, so we're not going to walk through the passing or whatever, but it wasn't in the immediate aftermath. It was maybe like a year and change, I think, when we did it, maybe like 18 months after Chris's passing. Yeah. And so This American Life episode had come out, and we talked then about I guess it was kind of like guilt, but like the success of Dopey and the cost, not so much the lives you're touching, which is we already went on, but just the profile, the reach, the numbers. Like, you always talked about wanting to, be a talk show host, being like a Howard Stern, like having a show. You worked in that field for a bit, right out of school and whatnot, and then you create this pod, and we go through what you went through, and then for the past few years, I mean, it hasn't been like plateauing. Like, it's been a slow, steady, like elevate. You're not losing listeners. You're not like right. So what I'm saying is this passion project has evolved into your life's work, and it's closely connected to your service. It's closely connected to your own fellowship meetings, etc. Like, it's this sort of blur of work and your life, right? And it's for all of us to consume. If you really think about it, like in the podcast, social media, immediacy age, you put a show out, and then thousands and thousands and eventually millions of people listen to it. And I know you have a wife she's not afflicted, and young daughters, and we know a lot about y'all's lives, right? Yeah. But you are careful. Like, it's not like you're putting there's
so many things I want to talk about on the show that I don't.
Sure. But what I'm getting at here, because I kind of struggle with this, and my mom listens to the pod, so I'm always conscientious of if anything I'm saying, would it be okay for her to know? And Mike Dillon's here, right? He's playing with Anders, and the funny story is when Mike did my pod, he told some excruciating tales, like one about getting a gun pulled on him and the blanks and
Yeah.
among others. And,
Yeah, I heard
and I
that
got
one.
a note from Vera, his mom, that she learned about her own son from my pod. Things she literally did not know, and she thanked me. She said it was hard to listen to, but thank you for giving him the opportunity to talk about this stuff, because and she's like in her 80s with purple hair, going to shows. I mean, she's the coolest. But my point being is that communicated to me my greatest fear would be like my mom hearing some abhorrent story that I told, very unflattering, whatever, from the dark days. So I'm asking you, because you deal with that on a macro level. How do you navigate? Tell it like it is, and like sometimes it makes you look like a clown, right? And you just put it out there. How do you like approach that line of like what's not for public consumption, but also being totally transparently Dave on Dopey?
I don't know where the line is, because I like to cross it as much as I can. Because, like, for me, like, I just think that's what humanity is. Humanity is, like, the dumb shit you do. A disgusting thing that I do, and I talk about all the time, is like on the Long Island Railroad, I often get allergic, and I never have tissues, so I take my socks off and I blow my nose into my socks. It's disgusting, but things like that are funny, and it's like, or like if I have a fight with Linda about something, people can relate to it, and I don't mind being the clown because I know what's funny in the story, and for me, that's as good as like a fucking crazy drug story. I love a crazy drug story, but I would be just as happy if you told some ridiculous story about something really stupid that you did or happened to you, because I think those are the best stories. It's something humiliating but also humbling that we can share, and it's those are the things that I think they're the currency that I've lived on my whole life. In addiction, out of addiction, as a kid, as an adult, they're very special stories for some reason. And I think sharing them is what connects people. And I think Dopey, the best thing about Dopey was to make somebody laugh and make somebody like be like, oh, holy shit, I can't believe that happened. And it's like, and then we connect because of it, or other people connect because of it. Or like when somebody, this week on the show you're on, the show starts, I read this fairly long email that I actually did an interview for, I think, Spin this morning, and the guy was like, I listened to your show, that email you read at the beginning was too long. And I was like, fuck. But the story was this woman who was a meth head, and she got busted driving in the middle of the country, and she wound up getting busted with a ton of meth and going to jail. And when she got to jail, she got sober, and she realized she was pregnant, and her parents weren't going to help her before they found out she was pregnant. But when they found out she was pregnant, they did help her, and she went home and she got sober, and she's sober, and she wanted to write this story about how this moment of sobriety in prison made her realize that she was pregnant, and that if she hadn't been sober, she might not have even found out and miscarried or whatever. And like, I feel like a story like that, it involves this woman. I don't know her. She feels safe to tell that story to our community, and our community is improved by her honesty and her willingness to share. And I love that.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's not the first time. I mean, you get a ton of emails, and they're not all quite like that, but you get a lot of people's most intensely personal purges.
And why do you think so?
Because y'all have it was twofold. So back in the days, in the Chris era, when it was about bringing the Dopey, right? And for those listening, so it's the currency of Dopey Podcast for, until Chris passed, was the dumb shit. And it was like the most ridiculous stories in the depths of your depravity of drug addiction or alcoholism, like the ridiculous things you did and the consequences and the ability to like rear view mirror and laugh at it. And obviously after Chris's death and the evolution of the show into the interview format, it's not solely predicated on Dopey. There are Dopey famines where there's several episodes with none, and then you'll get a guy like Jerry Stahl come on and drop so many that you can't count, right? So, point being, that willingness for you guys to open up, you told every last one in all your quivers, your quiver, Chris's quiver, Todd's quiver, and then
I don't think we got the best out of Todd.
no, you got some. I'm just saying. So people realize like this is where I go to like, because there's like shame in that stuff and like real ugliness, and that's toxic. That's poison. And I'm not a big recovery guy, but one of my mantras is you're only as sick as your secrets.
Totally.
And I've used that in my life tremendously. So I think when you say, why do people write that? Why did that lady write that story? Because they feel, like you said, safe in the sort of collective, like it's like a bosom where it's like, these people understand, I need to get this out. And then, maybe that purge opens up Pandora's box for a whole lot of amends, for a whole lot of forgiveness. And it started as like, tell me some fucking Dopey.
Right.
And it turns into magic.
It's also just like when you, and I appreciate when you say, I will put myself out there like some kind of clown. I will do that, and I do it enjoying it. Unless someone thinks I'm corny, I don't like that. But when people think it's funny, and people like, and a lot of people just get where I'm coming from, and then they know they can tell some ridiculous fucking story, and it creates a safe space. And like, I never was interested in creating a safe space, but I really am proud of our space.
It is safe though.
I know, but like, that's like a buzzword.
Right.
Like this whole place, this whole thing is built on all sorts of wellness buzzwords. And that's like the antithesis of what I ever wanted Dopey to be. And yet, I kind of walk around here half self-deprecating, but really, I know I built something that could stand up to this whole thing. And
it's way more real. It's tangible. Like, my problem with New Age stuff in general is it's like platitudes and word salads.
Yeah.
And like, what is it really? And
right.
like you, whether it's on Dopey or even in these panels, you're not. I
don't fuck with that shit.
Yes, thank you.
I refuse. And if I did, I would be ruined. Once in a while, though, like I'll tell you, it's been 7 years since I, smoked weed, and like maybe it's been 9 years since I shot dope, and maybe it's been 11 years since I was addicted to heroin. You know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like I haven't bought drugs in a long time. I haven't like hidden drugs or had drugs and so like sometimes I read the email like I'm my dad or something.
Right.
Because it's a little bit like that. Because it's like also when people talk about like the human body regenerates all its cells in 7 years or something. It's like I'm a totally different person.
Right.
But I still like, and sometimes I feel like they think I'm a fraud because I have clean time, which is funny. But I still am entertained by that shit because I know the places that we go,
Right.
But it's funny,
Totally.
right?
You do. And, it's you, and that's what's important. If you start becoming, and I'm not going to name names, but, the guy that you did yesterday, the panel with, if you comported yourself like that and talked to people like that.
It would be a problem.
Well, it wouldn't be Dave from Dopey Podcast. It would be
Something else.
Somebody else. And so I love that you, even in this sort of high-falutin wellness recovery, you bring, like...
I stayed true.
You dropped F-bombs, you talked New York shit, you made bad jokes, you made great jokes, you disarmed people. Before we get into the next question, I just want to tell the listeners, it was amazing to see Dave in the live context in some scenarios that he wasn't necessarily super comfortable in. Hosting a panel, navigating, making small talk, having prepared notes, going off the cuff. Honestly, man, like, you should, as much as this is available to you, whether it's in the recovery community, in the music event community, obviously there's cross-pollination happening now. Like, you're good at this. People react to you, respond to you. I took such a measure of pride in when you told your story yesterday, like kind of an abbreviated version of your in and out of addiction and your family and all that. Like, having lived that with you through the pod and our friendship, to see the impact it had on other people, knowing it like I know it, was one of the best moments that I had here.
Thank
Period.
you. I appreciate that.
For real.
What's sad, I really wish I could have told Chris's story. I didn't tell Chris's story in any of these things.
Right.
And that bothered me. But these things weren't supposed to be about me.
And I don't think that that and the real, you could have referenced it, but I don't think it was really appropriate in like the love context or the Anders context.
Right, it wasn't.
Right, but we're talking about it. You're doing the podcast here with me. You talked to Spin. Did you mention it to Spin?
Mention which?
The Chris.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of
So
course.
so you did mention it, just not in the panels when you were really interviewing other people.
Right.
So, but you did take a moment to say, "Hey, here's my story. This is why I'm here," for like 90 seconds. But you did it in a very impactful way, and knowing what I know, I was just proud of you.
Thanks.
And I was like, "That's my dude right there."
Gone are the days we stopped to decide where we should go. We just ride. Gone are the broken eyes we saw in dreams. Gone both dream and lie.
Recently, you
Yes.
had Carolyn Mountain Girl Garcia on.
Yes.
Now we talk about feathers and caps, like, and you've had Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, you've been on Mark Maron, you've had Mark Maron, you've had like numerous rock stars and celebrities.
Killer Mike, Danny Trejo,
Yeah.
blah, blah,
Give us
blah.
some real quick. Give me the highlight reel. Who you've had?
You know, the highlight reel is that was it. Fucking Andy Dick twice, fucking Killer Mike, Danny Trejo, who's been big?
Steven Adler.
Steven Adler, but I feel like we've had
Steve Gorman.
Jerry Stahl, I loved. Margaret Cho, Dr. Drew several times. It's like, I'm sure there's better ones. Andrew Zimmern. There's been a ton of people.
Yeah. My point being is like, this is, when you talk about Venn diagram, like you grew up loving the Dead. You've always, romanticized the acid test, Merry Pranksters, Haight-Ashbury.
All of it.
Right. And of course you have an intimate experience with heroin addiction. And so Mountain Girl came on Dopey, and she didn't just pop, like some of the celebrities you have on, they pop on and Nikki Sixx or whatever gives you like canned interview, responses. That was not this. This was, and as a Deadhead who's read all the books, I learned some nuggets, some details.
Me too.
Of their domesticated life, of
Yeah.
what he liked to do. So let's talk about that experience. Like, first of all, how did it come to pass? Like, how do you get connected with Jerry's wife? And just how did that make you feel? What are the reflections of the episode? Was that different for you because of your connection to the legacy of the GD and Garcia? Or what? All that stuff. I just want to
The
hear
way
that.
I feel about it is like, I grew up, when I was a teenager, I read the Electric Kool-Aid acid test, and I was like, I want my life to be like that. and I started taking acid. I started playing music, and I started reading Kerouac and Burroughs, and I was like, I want to be one of these people. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be one of these people, and I got into TV and I did drugs and whatever. I interviewed Bob Weir when I was on heroin. And it was terrible. But I wasn't invested in the Dead fully then. They were just kind of like a sideshow in my universe. And I went to see the Dead in the 90s a bunch of times, and I was around the scene, and I liked them. But they didn't drill a hole in my heart and exist until way later. And like when I talk about the Grateful Dead now and Jerry, like I cannot measure how much I love Jerry's playing, Jerry's music, Jerry's vibrancy, the Grateful Dead's legacy, who they are, their music, like their story. So like I've been trying to pick up crumbs along the way, and I got to interview Sam Cutler, It wasn't the best interview I ever did, but it was interesting, and I felt good about it. I got to interview Justin Kreutzmann, who is Bill Kreutzmann's son. I got to interview
Decorated filmmaker as well.
Oh, decorated documentarian, absolutely. And in each interview, I fucked up someplace, right? Fucking Cutler, he was not interested, and he wanted to talk about like some shooting that happened in Vegas at the time. Kreutzmann, I made fun of Bob Weir, and he shut down. And then I had Big Steve Parrish, who didn't like any bit of the interview until maybe 2/3 in. He was like, he came alive for like 5 minutes. He wanted to school me on how heroin was created. Are you all right? Are we good?
We're good.
So like, I'm just following this trail. And I interviewed a guy named Seth Ferranti. And Seth Ferranti there was a guy named Ryan Leone. And Ryan Leone was a really talented author.
Rest in peace, recently passed away.
He died recently, he has 2 little kids. And me and him became friends. And it was always at arm's length, you know what I mean? But he was a sweetheart.
Divisive character in the Dopey community.
Major polarizing Dopey figure, for sure. Also, people have said Ryan's first Dopey episode had the top 10 of the all-time Dopey stories. That's how fucking hardcore that dude was. And he had written a book in prison, and he became friends with this guy, Seth Ferranti, who wrote 20 books in prison, and he had gotten busted with I think 10,000 doses in the mid-90s and went to jail for fucking 20 years or something.
Yeah. And that guy Seth Ferranti was in the dead scene. He was like, he wasn't necessarily a deadhead, but he trafficked his psychedelics closely connected to the dead scene. I remember listening to that.
Yeah, basically, like, I had a connection who was like a hardcore deadhead. He was on tour, and he was like in one, like what they call the families, the Grateful Dead families, which, I mean, there's a ton of them. It's just like little, loose affiliations of people that do business together. And, so he's in the families. So it's like, I got my buddy, he's in the families, and then they got the chemists. And a lot of the chemists, a lot of it still, it's all centered like around San Francisco, as it has been, since the 60s. So, basically, like, there's these chemists, and they feed all these families, and then they got these people in the families, and they would go on tour and sell it. Like, I remember being at shows, and, like, they're flying, like, 25 grams, of crystal in. But then once they get it there, then, they got to lay it, they got to get the blotter. Like, sometimes you would be on the lot, and, I'm trying, like, my main objective is not the music. My main objective is drugs. So I'd be on the lot, and I'd be trying to get, like 100 sheets, which is basically, like 10,000 hits. And they'd be like, well, the crystal's here. They flew 25 grams of crystal in, but we got to get the blotter paper's not here yet. Because also the blotter paper, you just couldn't buy it anywhere. They would have to specially make it and ship that in too. So then they would have to get it, and then they would have to lay it, and then you could actually get it. So that's why eventually, like with my buddy, instead of going on tour, I'm like, man, just I want to do like a mail order, So they hooked that up where I could just call someone and they would just mail it wherever I wanted. I could get it mailed anywhere. I could get 100 sheets. They would put it like right in an overnight envelope and ship it right like that. But that's kind of how it went. So, like I knew some dudes, they'd be like, oh, this dude's family, like on the lot or stuff. So you knew who the big dudes were. And there were actually, they had dudes like, they had a dude like Cosmic Charlie, he passed now, but, they had like Cosmic Charlie, they had Fast Eddie, he's passed too, but they had all these dudes, like, you knew they were the big dudes on the lot. But at the same time, you had these dudes that you knew were the big dudes on the lot. You heard about the dudes that you never saw. Like, you heard about the chemists, but the chemists were never around, but you just heard, and to me, these were like these mystical, magical,
wizards,
like almost like wizards, like sorcerers. Dudes like Leonard Picard, or like Bear Stanley Owsley, these dudes that were the well-known chemists, and it was like, it was too, because it was a total outlaw culture. Like, you didn't say those people's names back then. Like, people would talk about them, and you knew who we were talking about, but you didn't say their names because of the law enforcement scrutiny.
And Seth Ferranti's a really interesting character. Like, he's, number one, he's got a big heart. And number two, like it didn't feel like we were vibing, but we were. And, like, And he was just so interested in outlaw culture, and I wanted to tap into outlaw culture. And I tried to hook him up with this guy I knew to make movies and stuff. And and then Ryan died, and me and him started talking more. But he was super connected to Mountain Girl and to the Grateful Dead family, because he has project after project about growing weed in your part of the world. LSD documentaries about organized crime and drugs. And he's such a prolific writer that him and MG were so close that he's helping her with the memoir. He's the person that's helping her with the memoir. And he's also fucking really tight with, what's her face? Owsley's ex, Lainey, I think her name is. Lainey Stanley. And, so I wanted, and Lainey Stanley's like an old Jew from New York. I wanted her on, and I wanted Mountain Girl on. And normally, with somebody like Caroline Mountain Girl Garcia, the interview's going to go to shit. She's going to ignore me, not like something I say. But something happened. First thing I did is I connected through Trixie, and I sent her and Trixie a box from Katz's. And they were so excited to get this box from Katz's.
Always.
And then me and them were just and she could tell how much I love Jerry, and that's Jerry's daughter, and how much I also really valued Mountain Girl's story. She came up pre-dead. She came up with Kesey. She came up in Palo Alto, and I thought her story was just as important as anybody's story, including Jerry Garcia's. Also, because she had, I think, 2 daughters with Jerry and 1 daughter with Kesey. And my partner had a daughter with me and had to deal with my heroin addiction. And I thought there was a real parallel in the story, except it was Jerry's wife, And so I knew I was going to get the fucking 101 on psychedelics. And then I was going to get how opioids affected a family. And when I got on the phone with her, me and her were just fucking it was probably the best interview I ever did. We just were we were in sync.
Yeah.
And I also have a thing for old nerdy ladies. And she's an old nerdy lady, and I came up with a lot of friends whose their moms were just like Mountain Girl, so I knew how to talk to her. She was just like my friend Jim's mom, and I talked to her like it was my friend Jim's mom, and she picked up on my style, and she's also from upstate New York. We had a lot of simpatico shit, and she loved the dopey vibe and also the dopey purpose. And she felt really happy to be a part of it and to help somebody. And I think she was really generous. We did, I think, 3 hours. Excuse me. We did 3 hours. We did an hour and a half. And then I had to go pick up my kids at a softball game. She's like, oh, call me back whenever. I called her back 2 hours later, and we did another hour and a half. And it was fucking incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. As a fan of the Grateful Dead and as a an intermediate scholar of that whole universe, and as a dopey listener, as a former, I guess I'll always be an opiate addict, even if I'm not using. So it checked a lot of boxes for me, and like I said, from a Dead history, Jerry history standpoint, I learned new stuff. I was trying to pinpoint. There was an early part of the conversation where you really got our trust.
I don't remember. I don't remember what it was.
We're gonna put the episode link to the Mountain Girl episode in the show notes, so y'all can listen. I highly recommend it.
Maybe it was the Ibogaine thing.
You're right.
It was Ibogaine and aliens.
Correct. Ibogaine and aliens.
Yeah, it was she saw fucking aliens after she had done Ibogaine, and I did Ibogaine, and I saw aliens, and B fucking texts me, and he's like, "Did you really see aliens? Were you bullshitting her?" But it was that was what it was.
Right, that's exactly what it was, but it really earned her trust. And that reminds me, dude, she had the craziest job before all this, working in a university lab with all
analyzing the craziest psychedelic chemicals. I know.
Of all people.
I know.
Even pre-Kesey.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I was and I said to her, doesn't this make you believe in fate? And she didn't even want to talk about that.
Right.
But it's like, you're the most fated person for this experience. The story where she goes to fucking town on her bike,
Right.
and Robert Hunter's the barista and kicks her out of the coffee shop, and Neil Cassidy picks her up. That was the story that was like, what?
Right. Yeah, it was exactly. And you're like thinking about who these people are and their roles and the.
It's like, imagine you walk down the street in Park City and like Robert Redford's like scooping ice cream and fucking, you know what I'm saying? It's just, it's bizarre. It's just bizarre. Our lives aren't like that.
No, they're not. You know, but it was just a remarkable episode. I highly recommend it. But I enjoyed the Seth Ferranti episode a lot.
He's a good dude, and I'm gonna get him back on because he's fucking prolific, and he wants to come on your show too.
I want to have him on the pod because I'm familiar with his work. I want to get up to speed on a couple of books. I've just seen him on YouTube and listened to him on a couple pods, including yours. But I really like the way that because in the beginning when we talked the first time you were on my pod, you were still figuring out the interview era, the context of Dopey. Post Chris, having a guest, you've messed around with some co-hosts, you've had people recurring roles. I've come on a few times, obviously at Ray, you've had Howie, etc. But you've really settled in. And even when we were talking about how you were going to lay out the Jerry Stahl episode, you're like, here's how it goes. Emails and the interview and the hang, and you used to maybe do a song at the end sometimes, but I guess you don't have a song for 300 and however many episodes, but.
Good So Bad's at the end. That's it.
Right. But no, you used to play like listener songs. Like dude would come in with like the banjo version, or Scott rapping.
We do it here and there.
Right. Well, I'm saying you can't keep up every week with a new Dopey song. You've really settled into a format that works, that's familiar, that clicks, and so I appreciate that. Even if I don't necessarily love every interview, and I do like most of them, but I'm just I have duds too. It's just like comes with the territory, especially when you're doing a weekly for 6+ years. But this might not be fun, but I think it's important to talk about.
Yes.
When we're talking about polarizing or divisive people. So you have a sponsee, or he was a sponsee at some point in time, somebody from meetings. Yeah. You had him on the show. Mm-hmm. He's unfortunately named Fentanyl J.
Nicknamed Fentanyl
right.
J.
Well, obviously that's not his government. But
that'd be funny if it was his real name.
That said, we just talked about, the deaths of 2 friends. Yeah. At least one of them was directly a result of fentanyl. And
both of them.
Okay, so both of them. I know some folks, both, people who are using opiates that didn't live, and people that were using cocaine and didn't live because of the cross-contamination. So the scourge of fentanyl has affected us directly in our lives. And we can say that for probably 99.5% of the Dopey listener base has been adversely affected in a major way by the scourge of fentanyl. Way worse than when people were just dying from dope, right? So you have taken a shine to this young man because you are in service and you believe in forgiveness. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just leading my listeners up to like where we're at. This dude is facing major time for large-scale fentanyl trafficking. Right. So let's talk about the decision. The what are you thinking about, and how are you evaluating the pros and cons of platforming someone who, admittedly, is responsible for death?
Well, first of all, shout out to Fentanyl Jay. No, secondly, I want to say Jay's not on the show anymore because he's drinking, and he's drinking, as far as I know, casually. And I don't talk about that on Dopey, so that's a exclusive. I haven't said that ever anywhere. But this is the thing about Jay. I met him last winter at my 12-step meeting, and he is one of the most lovable people I've ever met in my life. Just so charismatic. And when I met him, he was fucked. You know, he had 3 or 4 months clean. The run he had been on was just tore him the fuck up. He had no people. He had no work. He had no money. He had burned every bridge. He got busted with thousands of pills of fentanyl in Ohio. He was a big-time fentanyl trafficker, making crazy money with a wake of bodies in his past, both sexually and death. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was a player, like a kid, like a drug dealer kid, like from a movie or something.
A Jay-Z song.
Yeah, for sure. First time I heard him share, I was like, this kid's got to be on the show. And it took months to get him on the show. And me and him got in my car, and we went down to the Great South Bay, and we did an hour and a half. And he told me his story. And I thought it was one of my favorite interviews I ever got to do. And again, this is a Upful Life exclusive, because I've never talked about this on the show. He asked me to sponsor him shortly after, and I agreed. And I loved this kid. You know what I mean? Like, I loved working with him, taking him through the 12 steps. And I loved it when he'd come over. My kids loved him. Linda loved him. Like, he's a very lovable kid. And I had him as a co-host a bunch of times, very polarizing co-host. So people write songs about him, and other people despise him. And no one...
Diss songs or like...
No, praise songs. Okay. But nobody, except you, I think, has questioned his past as something that should not have him be a part of Dopey or be judged in any sort of way. So for me, listen, I did a lot of shit I wish I hadn't done. I don't know what he owns of that period and what he doesn't own. I know I really like him. I love him. And he seems to have a really good heart. He doesn't need to apologize to me for what he did.
Of course not.
I don't judge him for that stuff because he was an addict and he was using. And again,
that's not absolve anybody of anything.
Right, of course. No absolution.
You and I both did plenty of junk.
Yes.
And we don't have bodies.
Right, but I don't even I don't even think about it. Like, I don't know why. Okay. I don't have any sort of feeling about morals with him and what he did. If he did it now, I would have feelings about it. But for me, when someone comes in and they're done and he doesn't feel good about what he did.
But that's different. Like, come in, I'm done, I surrender, I'm powerless, so my life is unmanageable, right? Is not come on my show and talk to thousands of people. That's different than you counseling him privately, putting him on the show. So I'll just tell you why it bothered me, okay? And I'm not attacking you. I love
good.
you. You're my fucking dude.
Yeah, we're here.
I'm just telling you where I'm coming from.
It's fair enough.
I didn't like okay, so I knew a lot of Jays in the tri-state area.
Sure.
You know, loved hip-hop, spout Jay-Z lines, fucking Mac and chicks.
Right.
Especially down the shore in the summer.
Yes.
Come on. Right? I knew a lot of these cats. I don't hear, well, I haven't heard from him in a while. He's not on the show anymore. But when this was in real time, he was still chesty. He was still like a little bit cocky, not contrite. I didn't get a sense of like humbling ownership. Sure, he was like, I got busted and this is happening, my life's over, I'm going to prison. He was owning that, but that's fucking obvious.
Right.
His energy, his attitude, the way he carried it on the show just had a ton of ego still. And that plus the past was no-go for me. So it just irked me that here you were giving him the gift. The platform, and also, unbeknownst to everyone else, the gift of sponsorship and and mentorship and all that stuff, or before, whatever. He came on Dopey first, then you gave him the sponsorship. Point being, it didn't feel gracious or humble. It felt chesty and cocky.
Okay.
And that rubbed me the wrong
But I can speak to that really, really easily.
Okay.
And this is the thing. I think people are way different on a microphone than they are in reality a lot of the time. And Jay is a young man. He's in his mid-20s, late 20s, whatever. And whatever he did on the show was through this filter, apparatus, whatever. And I saw right through it. And I that is a pose, you know?
Right.
And it's also, for me, if you really want to open this thing up, I think it's funny. I think it is. I think there's shtick on shtick on shtick, and like I like mocking him, and I also like that he is this character, and I also love how like he's an idiot, like and he's silly, and he's self-deprecating as well, and he knows like it's a pose deep down. Like I think when I look at him, I see past what I don't hear what's coming out of the speakers because I'm sitting with him, right. and I get a different sense. And like the fact of the matter was, when he was on the show, I was so relieved because that was pure. Like for me, like that was the real that was Dopey.
Right.
Like he was it. I was so excited when Jay in his first 3 episodes. His last episode, I think he had already had a drink or two, and he wasn't trying to figure out how to move into a life of sobriety. And like Dopey shouldn't be pigeonholed into something like that, but there's just something about the vibe that you need it. And I loved having like Erin Carr is on often. She's very bright. She's a writer. She was a horrible heroin addict for a long time. I loved being able to toggle them. Like I really liked that. And I was very sad. Like I was sad that Jay went. Like Jay, I ran into Jay the other day. He seems happy as a fucking clam. I don't think he's like using. I think he drinks occasionally. He doesn't want to deal with 12-step meetings. He's 27. He doesn't want to deal with that shit. And like, what am I going to say? I didn't want to go to 12-step meetings when I was 27. Like I'd been like, fuck you. I don't want to go. Selfishly, I miss him on the show. Selfishly, I miss him as a sponsee. He's going to come to DopeyCon. And I love him. You know what I mean? Like me and Linda and Susan are in Chipotle the other day fucking eating, and Jay pops up. You know what I mean? And I see him like a little brother or something. Like I really like love this kid.
I respect that. And
and you can tell how serious I am about
100%.
it. Also, the worst thing though is I had this feeling when he was on the show that he was going to die, and it was the next one. You know what I mean? And that was a scary feeling. You know, like, and I still kind of have that scary feeling about him. Like, what's going to happen? Is he going to do 10 years in prison? Is he going to relapse and die? What's going to happen with him? You know?
Right.
And I would say that to him on the show, and I think that made him a little uncomfortable. But he knew because he went as far as anyone,
Right.
personally and dealing. He wasn't just a dealer; he was fucking using like a crazy person.
Yeah, his story is riveting and illuminating.
Chesty's a good word, though. It was very chesty.
I find myself liking the guy because of his candor, and like we have a lot of the same, crossover of things we're into, and like I knew kids like him growing up. It's not like I dislike him. I struggle with the disconnect because of like what he's facing and like what's in his past and his just cavalier attitude in general. So if he was my friend, I might be like, dude, but when it's just the Dopey thing, I just wanted to ask you if you had any moral, sort of battle between the ears regarding the fentanyl factor.
The other thing is, no, I didn't, and I wish I had. I have a little bit of a moral failing here and there. I'm not the most like.
I wouldn't call it that.
No. I have a little vacancy with some things that a lot of people care about. You know what I mean? I just do. Like the fucking Tom McDonald.
That's my next question.
But before we get to the Tom McDonald, I prioritize, and it might not be for the best. I prioritize the show, and with Jay, like I love him. You know what I mean? I can say it 100 times, and I loved him on the show. He was a fucking idiot also, and he gave out 100 shout outs, and people hated him. But I loved the absurd. They just thought it was annoying. You know, he shouted out everybody, and then I started shouting people out because I thought it was silly and fun. But I'm going to say one last thing about Jay. I've known a lot of people in my life. I don't think I ever met anybody as magnetic as this kid. You go to anywhere with him, all eyes are on him. It's crazy. I never saw that before. And I wanted it for the show.
Tupac.
He is like that.
Yeah.
He is magnetic like I've never seen.
I mean, you gotta hope that whatever sentence he gets, and that he like goes through it and comes out the other side and can use that magnetism
To do something good.
right.
Yeah.
Whether it's his story, sounds like it would be like amazing motion picture. Right.
For sure.
So maybe he can take the time to divorce himself from, you know, I'm Fentanyl J, what up, to like write his story like a Seth Ferranti kind of turnaround.
Well, might have time to do that.
Well, yeah, let's hope. You know, I still don't want to see him get smacked too hard. I mean, nobody does. I mean, I am lucky that I only did the year. You know, I got sentenced to 2. I only had to do 1. And granted, cannabis is a far cry from fentanyl. But there are still peoples of color, people from when there was a different attitude towards cannabis doing time for less weed than I got popped for. So I have to be conscientious of that. But that's not what we're talking about here. You mentioned the Tom McDonald thing. So for those listening at home, like Dave and I have been friends for 4+ years. And the only time we've actually ever had like a legitimate fissure or disagreement.
I think there was somebody else too. I think there was somebody else that you were.
That I objected to?
Yeah, I don't remember who that.
But
it wasn't like that.
I didn't silent treatment you over it like I did this time.
Right.
So, and this is me. Like Dave did not have any role in like he wasn't trying to have an argument or have a disagreement with me. I took umbrage and objection to a guest on the show, a rapper named Tom McDonald, who is popular with like MAGA, right wing.
People.
Yeah, libertarians, etc. Just a sort of like culture war. He's really sort of monopolized that sort of right wing,
anti-woke kind of sentiment.
Humans been controlled since the day that they were civilized. The truth has been so heavily politicized. If you don't know who's controlling you and killing all the little guys, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. Black folks who were never ever actual slaves, fighting with white folks who ain't actual Nazis, controlled by rich folks who use the news to make hate, while elite folks control other political parties.
And it's no secret to those listening at home, I'm very invested on the other side of things. And while I'm not here to censor anybody or tell someone they can't make the music they want, I sure as shit wouldn't platform it. Dave's a different guy. It's a different show. There's recovery in Tom's story. But Dave asked me, I don't think he was prepared for how angry I was going to get when he floated the idea.
I had a feeling. I had a hunch.
Right. But I didn't, it's not like I raised my voice to you. I just like adamantly told you that this was...
You broke it down.
It was like, and what we said to each other is not for the air, or what I said to you, but I just expressed that this was a line I couldn't cross, and that I've proudly waved the Dopey flag for years. I've come on this show anytime I find somebody that's either in the thick of addiction or celebrating a recovery anniversary. I ask, do you know about Dopey? Do you listen to Dopey? Please join us. So I didn't want to do that and have somebody go check out Dopey and it's Tom McDonald, right? That's not kosher.
Yeah, no,
right?
Far from it.
So that's where I drew the line, and I said, man, if you do this, I'm going to be on Dopey hiatus for a while.
And you were.
And I was, I fucking muted you on Twitter, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't want to see the post.
Cold-blooded.
No, I was going to come in hot.
Right.
And be a dick.
Right.
So if I don't see it,
right,
then I'm
it's
not
easier.
going to do it.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So,
I respect that.
You know, you're unmuted. We're good.
Here we are.
Yeah, dude. I never loved you any less. I had to do this for my own conscience and principles. Okay?
I get it. I got it then too. I was straight up about it.
Were. So, let's talk about that. What did you evaluate? Because you told me like you never had thought twice about Fentanyl J because of all the reasons you said and who he is, and your relationship to him and your fondness for him. So how did you rationalize or navigate the should I, shouldn't I, the polarization of him? Because he didn't necessarily say a bunch of right-wing shit on your show, but that's his brand.
He didn't say any. First of all, he didn't say any right-wing shit on the show. Number one. Number
Do you
two.
think he knew he was talking to a Jewish guy?
I think so. Because he was supposed to come on, and I had done no research. And first, let me back it up.
All right.
We started, Dopey didn't really exist on YouTube. And I have this friend who does video production, and he's like, if you want to do some YouTube shit, I'll do it for you. And I was like, great. And my friend's name was Howie, and I've known him for 25 years, since Burly Bear. And he was like, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, and I'll come over once a week and we'll shoot interviews and daily reflections. And Howie's really plugged in to YouTube culture. And I am not plugged into YouTube culture. Howie paid attention to the fact that Tom McDonald got 10 million plus every fucking stupid video he dropped. And he was like, and he knew that Tom McDonald had a couple of songs that were about sobriety and addiction, and videos that were very, very graphic around drug addiction and recovery. And he was like, you should get this guy on. So I was like, okay. And I didn't listen to his music. And I think I actually listened to those songs. And, to be 100% real, I wasn't the biggest fan of those songs. I like old school hip hop, you know what I mean? Like, and this music was not like old school hip hop. And his aesthetic wasn't an aesthetic that I was comfortable with, tattooed face, weird long braids, all that stuff. It was not something that I was attracted to. And then I started listening to interviews with him. And he doesn't present in a way that is crazy right-wing in his interviews. His songs have an anti-woke sentiment, and he wants to play the part of a wrestler, rocking the apple cart of wokeness, of high-falutin shit, political correctness, and play this part, and to be totally, as they say in the streets, keep it at 100. I wanted the exposure.
Sure.
I wanted a guest that gets 10 million fucking views. And then I'll take it one step further. When I first talked to Tom McDonald, and I wasn't prepared, I was like, do you mind if we do it next week? And he was like, nah, dog, that's cool. And I was like, you're a mensch. And he said, what's a mensch? And I said, oh, it's a Yiddish word for a really cool and capable person who acts in someone else's best interest. And he goes, oh. And then he hangs up the phone. I was like, Howie, do you think he's going to come back? But when he came back, he was cool as the fucking other side of the pillow. He was a sweetheart. He was open. He was vulnerable. When I talked about being a right-wing weirdo, he said, I don't believe in the right or the left. That was his take. He knew he was talking to some liberal Jew from New York City. He knew where I was coming from, and he fucking colored in the lines. He didn't fuck with it. And more than that, he fucking promoted the fuck out of it. And where all of my YouTube videos are lucky if they get 200 views, my Tom McDonald interview got 26,000. And everyone wrote I'm the greatest interviewer in the world, which was nice.
I'm sure.
I don't want to... And we had so many conversations about it, and where it all lands, I never want to fucking profile or promote anybody who has any kind of hate speech. And where I was with Tom McDonald, I didn't feel like he did. I feel like he does have a fan base that is MAGA. He does have a fan base that isn't my fan base or my people, or what? Maybe there's a tiny Venn diagram there, but not really. But he was a person who struggled with addiction and mental illness and really had a problem, and really went through something. And he told that story, and then and he told it well. But the funny thing is, his episode didn't hit. Nobody tuned in. Only Dopey Nation people tuned in, and they didn't fucking give a shit. You know what I mean? They weren't really turned on by his story. They weren't turned on by his politics or turned off because he didn't really put it on Front Street.
Right.
But A couple people thought he was boring, you know, and his audience loved the shit out of the interview. In the end, I'm happy I did it because also Tom McDonald, unlike, you know, Josh Peck, who has a similar YouTube presence, Tom McDonald was cool to me. Like, likes my shit on Instagram, comments on my Instagram posts, congratulates me for my recovery. He was kinder than 90% of the people with his reach. And that's a testament to who he actually is.
Yeah.
So
there's a lesson there for me, you know, to hear, despite all the baggage, here's
my experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's important for people to hear, that's what that was, because I fall victim a lot to the divide, to the polarity, and I'm like, oh, that guy's on that team, I can't fuck with that, right? So I'm owning that, right? And the fact that, and I'm going to take it old school now, you've always kind of, because our friendship has kind of overlapped with like the Trump's presidency and the pandemic.
Sure.
And Dark Brandon, you know, so anyway, naturally, we have a lot of conversations about current events, issues of the day. You know, when I say a lot, I mean, for friends, instead of talking about like the Knicks, you know, we might be talking about fucking, you know, George Floyd or something, right? So, and I appreciate that you communicate with me about that stuff whenever I need to talk about it or wherever and sometimes, you know, the lines get crossed in this situation where I take a personal, you know, umbrage to a professional move of yours or whatever. And I'm glad that we're able to sort of, you know, get through it, and you didn't hate me for, you know, ignoring you for several months, and I didn't hold this against you for any longer than
it required what it required, right?
Right. But what I was getting at with that is that you always have kind of taken this sort of like, well, what do we really know approach, whether we're talking about COVID or whether we're talking about politics or, you know, like, I would be like, but here's how it is. And you'd be like, you know, with a vaccine, whatever. Well, do you really know? Do you really know? Like, and you're going to get mad and you're going to like hold judgment against someone else because they believe something different than you. Like, you've always kind of taken that sort of contrarian, like, you know, like people are going to think what they think, and like, this is what I'm here to do, and I'm not going to traffic in the culture war. And I can remember specifically where like me and several other dopes were pissed because the way Bob was edited, talking about like Trump and MAGA and I think Biden, I don't remember what it was, but Bob, you know, from Dr. Drew Bob. I'm talking going back like 3 years. And like, he had said a bunch of like kind of left stuff, and Sam, your editor, had been like, fuck this political shit. But he left a couple lines in
and it made
that
Bob
made Bob look like he was like espousing for Trump stuff. And then people were like, what the fuck?
Right.
And that was, and you didn't even mean for that to happen.
That was a mistake.
Right. So I guess what I'm getting at here is like, so we went from that to the Tom McDonald thing, which was way more of a lightning rod, yet became nothing. A recovery story, normal dopey numbers, new friend on Instagram, and yet I burned a lot of anxiety, negative energy, like stewing about you putting him on the show.
Well, you know, it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think in a lot of ways, I'm apolitical, you know, and a lot of it is self-centeredness, dopey-centeredness, but the real thing is, I don't believe fucking shit. You know what I mean? I don't believe what I hear from either side. Nobody seems to be keeping it at 100. To me, like, I feel like everybody's got an agenda. The love is, like yesterday, in that panel, like, I love that lady, and she was talking about Trump in this really nasty way in that panel, and Trump supporters. And it's like, once you do that, you're removing the love. Because it's like, these people are just people. You know, they happen to be buying into this fucking ridiculous shit that keeps us more separated. I tend to just stay out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a Trump fan, and I'm not a Trump fan. Right. I find Trump to be one of the most, the word I use to deal with Trump is I find it really unfortunate. Yeah. And because I think I don't understand how he went the way he went. He just had, like, I just had this belief that deep down he didn't believe the shit he was saying. And like, why did he want to do that? And like, and now our country is so divided and everyone is so fearful of each other and they're so disconnected. And all I want is for people to be unified and be together. It's like fucking, I went to the Elvin Bishop and Charlie Musselwhite concert last night, and Elvin Bishop sang a song about it. Like, in the old days, you could disagree with somebody, but you don't have to hate them.
Right.
And you could find a way to talk to them. It's such a sad state.
It is. Look, man, and I'm part of it. You know, I'm way less vocal and less angry, but I don't know. I have mixed emotions about. I understand where you're coming from. I respect it. Quote, staying out of it. Yeah. It feels like spiritual bypass.
I have no
like
business in it.
I've got my wife, I've got my 2 kids, I have a home, they're going to school, so like, fight amongst yourselves.
Rasta don't work for no CIA. I'm fucking not fucking with that shit.
I respect it, man. I'm just saying, for me, I'm very invested in it, and I feel like if we just ignore it, then it's not going to come out.
I think that it's great. I think it is great. I just don't believe either side.
Right.
I don't feel comfortable.
I'm no Democrat, bro. I'm just virulently against the right-wing MAGA thing.
I am too, but I feel horrible about the other side too. I feel like both sides is fucking murder and lies and bullshit, and I'm tired of. I don't want to give them my fucking attention.
I respect it, man.
You know, like, I'm just not into it. Like, I'm into love. I'm into friendship. I'm into laughing. Like, and I know it's sad. It's like I'm naive to say that shit.
No, you're not.
But like, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't like any of my options.
Me either, man. I'm not out here, dude, campaigning for some politician. I'm just saying I feel strongly about stuff, so much so that like, you're my good friend. I love Dopey Podcast, and I needed a break from it because
Everybody needs a break from Dopey once in a while.
But you know,
except me.
Was there ever any culture war stuff in the Dopey Nation? Did things ever like pop? So that's remarkable because very few spaces in our society are not adversely affected by the culture war.
Actually, let me take that back a second. In the height of the Trump presidency, I put up a few memes about Trump. And I put up a few things that I thought were funny, and here and there I might have said, like, what a fucking idiot. Like, me and Chris would talk about it, you know,
Right.
and I'd be like, I can't believe he's so comfortable being this intense villain. And I remember there was a guy who followed us on Instagram from the beginning, and he was a Trump guy, but he was a dopey guy. He was fucking dopey through and through. And he took such umbrage with even just the little, because I barely got into it. He took such umbrage with the little things. He was like, I can't fucking listen to you anymore. And I was like, well, you do what you got to do. Yeah. But like, I don't want, like,
I did the same thing.
Well, exactly. but it's like, like Todd, who died, wore a shirt that said, Rasta don't work for no CIA, which is from Rat Race. And it's like, and Bob Marley would talk about politicians instead of, you know, that political people can't be trusted. And I like that agenda, and I like being apolitical. And do you ever see people wearing the Rasta don't work for no CIA shirt?
Maybe. It doesn't ring a bell, though.
It's like,
I love the line. I mean,
it was like my favorite t-shirt Todd ever wore. I was like trying to get it back at him.
You gotta try to find it then.
It's gone. I wanted to make dopey shirts that said that.
Well, I'm sure this shirt's still out there, or you can make it. You can make it yourself.
I'm not gonna make it.
Right.
The point is, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to contribute to that until I have to. Until it's like the Nazis are coming after my people, and it's like now I have to fucking stand up, you know, because it's just the other side doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, there's just giving a fuck. It's basically where I'm at with it. You know, I just care. I'm not like vote blue down the fucking line. I sure as shit I'm not a Biden guy.
Right.
You know, I'm just. I saw it within my own family. I saw it in my community. I saw it with the QAnon stuff.
Sure.
I'm talking about in my life, not on the internet, not on Reddit. I'm talking about in my life, people in my life. And so because of that, I'm intensely invested.
I had a huge fight with Linda's mother. Who she's a little Trumpy, not major Trumpy, a little Trumpy, and I had a huge fight with her during COVID, during Black Lives Matter. Like I got into the crazy fight with her, but and I love Bernie. Like I loved Bernie.
Unelectable.
I just don't know why Bernie can't take somebody under his wing who's electable and mentor him. Like, why is that not the story? Like, why can't what's her face? Warren, what's her name?
Elizabeth.
Why can't Elizabeth Warren and Bernie mentor somebody who can do the next right thing? You know, I want to see that.
I mean, I think you said the answer before. Politics. It's like they're mentoring someone else means it ain't gonna be them.
Right, because their ego's in the fucking way, which is really disappointing. You know? So, like, I want to see somebody who cares about people. I want to see somebody, more than anything, I want to see somebody unite our country or the world. Just I want to see love come back.
You and me both, brother. From your lips
I
to
wish
God's ears.
I wish I had talked about that yesterday. I mean, because that was this thing was about what would love do?
Right.
Love would unite people. You know.
Now those folks, you know, they had plenty of expertise about mental health and trauma, but they weren't ready for that conversation.
And I wasn't
It was
either.
Too real.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
right.
they were in wellness word salad land.
They were also very, like, one thing is one thing is one thing. You know.
You know, well, that they got somewhere with it. Obviously, he's giving speeches, she's making films, so respect to them, and I think you hung tough with them. And so, as I was saying, you know, we've all experienced in one way or another personal lives, professional lives, people with different beliefs, different ideology. I don't think it ever mattered. Like you said, it used to be a time where we could just have a conversation, or Charlie Musselwhite said it, or Elvin Bishop.
Sure.
Right, and I agree. And I remember spirited discussions, even between my parents and grandparents, of different ideas and stuff. And yeah, go on other days. So yeah, we were just talking about that, and I can appreciate you having Tom McDonald on. I can appreciate you having I don't want to get involved in this. I'm not on either side, and you can appreciate that I'm invested in it. And we can disagree. We can have a conversation about it, or not even talk about it, and just talk about life, sports, drugs, addiction, dumb shit. Right? We don't have to talk about the divide, and hopefully, this is an example for anybody listening that people can agree to disagree. And even take a time out and be all good.
And be cool.
Right.
100%.
Right. So thank you for bearing with me while I got through my feelings.
Well, I mean, but that's like what friendship is supposed to be, you know? And it's like, and I also like, I really love friendship. And I love loyalty. And I love being connected. I love being your friend. I like being connected to you. I like being connected to your show. You do things that I wish I could do. You know what I mean? So I have a vicarious thrill to be around your shit. So I'm happy.
Well, the feelings are mutual. I've gotten great strength and understanding and compassion and knowledge and empathy and love from Dopey, from the stories that are told, from your guests, from you and Chris.
And you're a Dopey star. You know, I tell people you're here, they're like, yo, say what's up to B. You know, people know you. And I love I don't know if your audience knows this or not. Over the years, I did a number of tribute shows to Chris, and I would have Dopey Nation people put in a little message here and there. And B would often be in the routine, and B, unlike everybody else, would lay out a music bed, usually like Capleton or some good reggae, and he would do this amazing intro, and it was like just such a cool character, and it was a character I wanted in the show. So like it's like that gave the show more value. It gave it depth. It gave it texture and life, and I love that.
Well, I appreciate it, and it was a fun thing to do, and I'll still do it from time to time. And I love the way you opened up the community. You said, like, send in your thoughts and feelings specific to, like, Chris's passing, anniversary, what Dopey means to you, and just to hear the people from all over the world,
right,
and all the different ages. And you got, like, the gambling guy David on the other side of the world with his crazy accent, Mascalani.
Yeah.
Right?
This is Dave Mascalani.
Right. So and then you got the Dopey Birds in UK, and you got people all over.
Dopey Birds are coming to DopeyCon.
I love
Mick
that.
Popham's coming from fucking New Zealand.
All right, so this is going to come out after DopeyCon.
Yeah.
But let's talk about it. what is DopeyCon to begin with, and what's your vision for 3.0?
Oy vey. It's like DopeyCon was a dream that was right there in the beginning of the show, and me and Chris would talk about it, and I don't know why we didn't pull it off. It was probably because we were lazy, you know? And then after he died, show grew, and I just knew it would be a great thrill to set up some kind of live show / fan convention. So like in 2018, we did our first DopeyCon, and 100 dope showed up, and we had a bunch of speakers, and it was fun, and it felt good. And then COVID happened, so we didn't have a DopeyCon, and I was like, let's do a fucking virtual DopeyCon 2. And I had a bunch of like kind of pseudo celebrities tell some stories. I had a shitload of Dopey Nation people saying what's up, telling stories, and I really enjoyed most of DopeyCon 2. There's one thing I wish I had done differently, but whatever. And then I had the chance to do the third one, and we kind of waited a while, and then I was like, I don't know, like I want to do it. I want to see the Dopey Nation. I want the Dopey Nation to see each other. Like, so we're doing DopeyCon 3, but I said we're not calling it DopeyCon 3. We're calling it DopeyCon 2022 because we don't want it to be like House Party 5 and shit. Right. You don't want it to be like once it's like they don't number Comic Cons. Right. So it's DopeyCon 2022.
First House Party's dope.
I'm not against House Party. I just like any movie, Jaws 4, right. Superman 4. It's
Halloween
it's never good.
Right.
You know.
Rocky 4 was good.
Nah. Rocky 5 was better than Rocky 4.
Get the fuck out of here. Tommy Morrison?
It was bad. It had some sort of a cathartic feeling
yeah,
that.
Because of the kid. We're getting off track.
But
so DopeyCon is in
Rocky 4. People love the training.
Yeah,
I must break you.
Yeah,
whatever. DopeyCon. It's going to be on October 1st. It was on October 1st. I'm a little bit worried, to be honest with you. The vision is I want it to be like as it's like live with Jimmy Kimmel, and it's going to be me at a desk and a bunch of guests. So far, Brandon Novak's going to be on it. Andy Roy's going to be on it. Aaron Carr is going to be on it. Ray Brown is coming back to do some tunes. My dad's going to be on it. This lady who's a New York Times addiction writer, her name is Maya Solovitz. She wrote a book called Undoing Drugs, all about harm reduction. She's going to be speaking. We're going to have special guests. We're going to be playing a game show with 200 contestants because that's how we roll. And somebody's going to get to win a tour of my dad's apartment. There's going to be music. There's a comedian named Chloe LeBranch who's coming. There's a bunch of like weirdo recovery meme people that are coming, and they're going to do meme shit. And Katz's is going to cater it, and I'm just excited. I'm just excited to see the people, to like, you know, fucking meet people, watch them meet each other, and have fun. You know, like an event like this, to see all these people be in these labs. DopeyCon is going to be way better because the people who come to DopeyCon are into fucking Dopey. They live it. Half of them have tattoos and shit.
I know.
So, I'm nervous about DopeyCon, but I know that, like, forget how good a show it is, blah, blah, blah. The love is going to be off the fucking hook. Like, these people listen to hundreds of hours of Dopey.
I know.
And they also are in Zooms with each other every week.
Yeah.
So
that's so beautiful that has continued even as we're out of lockdown.
There's 26 Dopey Nation Zooms a week.
Think about that. That's
crazy.
Meeting. And it's not your
I don't go.
Book thumping.
No.
They're all like tweaked. There's ladies, there's this, there's like all these different like flavors of it.
Yeah.
Unique to your situation.
That's
kind of between the tattoos and the 26 Dopey meetings, you got to feel a sense of pride.
I think we also sent 33 people to free treatment.
I mean, that's another level.
The other thing about DopeyCon, though, is that because so many people would tell me how many people I was helping with Dopey, I didn't like that feeling. And I was like, I don't want Dopey to exist to help people. I want Dopey to exist as a good show. So we started a foundation. We set up a 501c3 called the Dopey Foundation. And that place, their job is to help people.
Right.
My dad is the chairman of the board of the Dopey Foundation, and right now we are raising money for Narcan, for fentanyl testing, and for also for rehab scholarships. Then the next thing that we're going to do is set up peer-to-peer support where people who are scared to go to meetings or don't want to deal with having a God of their own understanding or not, but they can talk to another addict. Also, we're going to set up like peer-to-peer bereavement people, because there are so many people in the Dopey Nation that have lost their partner or their kid, and they're alone, and they get so much joy from being in this community that the next level of joy is there's this woman named Tenley, and she lives in Seattle, and her partner died of an overdose, and all she wants to do is be of service to somebody else. And I know that when we set up this peer-to-peer thing, she's going to get to be of service and help somebody and feel better. And so DopeyCon 2022 is a fundraiser for the Dopey Foundation. It's all going into that. That's really the whole point of it. I mean, there's 2 points. 1, to make me feel good. 2, to make them feel good. And 3, to see what we can do with this foundation.
That's 3 points.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The fact is that people have been affected, and the fact is that we can do something, which is better than not doing anything.
Right. And you've been doing something. You continue to do something. You did stuff while you were here. You've done it with me. I don't want anybody listening to think they could just call Dave, but I'll let it be known that Dave helped one of my dearest old friends who was in despair and in trouble, and you in one way or another made sure he got where he needed to go, and I'm happy to report he's still in recovery, and I'm very proud of him. I'm going to see him next week when I'm back on the East Coast. And I just wanted to say that doing that wasn't for me. I called you. I was at my wit's end. I said, I need help. My boy needs help. And you got a wife, 2 kids,
2 jobs,
2 jobs, and 1 million listeners who could probably benefit from Dave pulling a string or 2. Yet you heard something in my voice, and then you knew that what my friend was going through, because you went through it and you handled it, and I'm just grateful for that.
Well, the deal is, because people have always helped me, I have to help people. And I hope that the people I help people. And then that's the way this thing works. You know what I mean? I didn't do it, and to be totally clear, I didn't do it for you, and I didn't do it for him. I did it for me, because when I can be of service, my life is better, and everybody benefits. And I tell people, be of service selfishly. Be of service so you can feel good, because everybody benefits, Yeah. And if I didn't do it, if I was like, I'm too busy, I would have suffered, He would have suffered, you would have suffered, and I would have suffered, as opposed to make a couple calls. Big deal.
Right.
And in the end, you fell over me, and I'm like, I'm a good guy, and whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's like, be of service because it's going to help you. And I think that's a really important thing. Everyone's so worried about being spiritually correct and upright. Don't worry about that. Worry about how you can feel good. Yeah. And you can feel good being of maximum service, just to feel good.
Yeah. And I mean, you're living proof, man.
Take it from me, because I be living proof. I kick the truth to the young black youth.
Yes.
You can cut that. You're going to cut that out.
I'm not going to cut it. It's the truth.
Leave it up to me while I be living proof. To kick the truth to the young black youth. When shorties running wild, smoking cess, drinking beer, and ain't trying to hear what I'm kicking in his ear.
It's Wu-Tang. It's forever.
Yes. Wu-Tang for the children.
Well, Dave, this has been an absolute joy. You're a mensch, and I'm proud to know you, proud to call you a friend. I'm stoked for Dopey Podcast, Dopey Nation. All the links will be in the show notes, but you got to check out the merch. Dave brought me a sticker pack, a pair of socks. There's tons of merch out there.
Yes.
And that's all for a good cause. So let's do the Dopey sign off on the Upful Life podcast. What do you think?
Sure. We say stay strong, Dopey Nation, and I say fucking toodles for Chris.
And I'll say stay strong, Dopey Nation, but me not say toodles.
Snowflakes rolling over my ear, goose bumping liver. If I'm hungry at 4:30 in the morning, King Dot will deliver. And I My knees are 2 inches in the ground, honey. And I said, God damn that Bible pushing man. You know I smoked a lot of grass, and I popped a lot of pills, but I have never done nothing that my spirit couldn't kill. And I walked around.
With big old tombstones in my eyes. Whew. Want to thank my man, David Manheim, from Dopey Podcast. Some know him as Dopey Dave, but we don't do that around here. So, yeah, that was amazing and fulfilling and rewarding, and it happened a couple months ago, so it was just a joy to revisit that night. It was at the end of what was 4 days at Park City Song Summit. Incredible, really awesome, progressive, forward-thinking convergence of folk music and wellness and mental health and recovery. Just tremendous. And I hope that I'm fortunate enough to go back next year, even without the Palace, which was overkill for the record. Just how it played out. But certainly something to laugh at. We had a lot to laugh at. We had a lot to reflect on. We had a lot to even tear up and cry about. And that's what makes Dave and Dopey and even this podcast so special to us who make it, and to those who listen, is just the emotional color wheel is visited in all its glorious and gloomy and wretched and beautiful shades. And even just thinking about the terrain that we cover with Dave, addiction and loss and reflection, guilt. You know, we're not on the same page on a lot of things, but we're of the same cloth and same tribe. And I have a tremendous amount of affinity and love and respect and admiration for Dave. And you just heard for an hour and 40 minutes just why. So thank you for blessing up the Upful Life podcast, Dave. Big love to Linda and the kiddos. Shout out the Dopey Nation. You know, I'm not as much of a fixture on social in that world as I once was, but I still binge on the pods when I'm trimming weed, and even when I'm not, in the car with my now wife and on walks around the neighborhood. I'm still a dedicated Dopey listener, and it's still a big part of my, quote, program in the alt recovery movement. I want to shout out everyone out there in the struggle, at whatever point you're in the struggle, whether you're in the thick of the throes of addiction. I hope you know that it can and will get better. And if you made it, I'm so happy for you, for us, and continue helping others in whatever capacity you can, because that's medicine. The gift of service and the feelings and the experiences and the relationships that are born of those relationships, connections, and that service is medicine in itself. And you can hit me up anytime in that regard. b.gets@upfullife.com. Doesn't just have to be about the pod, just something on this pod or something in my sphere is of interest or note to you. Hit me up. Let's chat. That's what this is about. Tomorrow's not promised. We're losing good folks, not just to the affliction, but across the board. So I'm all for connection, relationships, and helping people. So with that, let's wrap things up for episode 63. Before I do that, I want to let y'all know you might have heard a snippet of Chris talking that was not from Dopey. That's from this program he did called A Deadly Silence, which is a chilling title for this interview. A Deadly Science 113, Christopher O'Connor, hosted by Larry Curtis. Really, really deep, conversation with Chris about his journey through addiction, and it's like recovery speak and also clinical, so it's heady stuff, and it just goes to show you how brilliant Chris was, and how articulate, and how personable, and he has this sort of like aw shucksness to him in this interview, and in general, but certainly talking to this grizzled old recovery vet. So I recommend you checking that out. Shout out Dopey. If you want to support the Upful Life podcast, I'd be honored and grateful. There's links in the show notes for Venmo and PayPal on this episode. And then, of course, you can just go to upfullife.com. There's a big support button on the top there underneath the logo. And please check out upfullife.com, Upful Life's 6th annual Favorite Records of the Year compendium, my heart, my joy, my labor of love, my gift to the culture. So for the Vibe Junkie Jam of the Week, we're going Shannon Hoon, Blind Melon, who you've been hearing for the past few minutes. The original heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss to the affliction in October 21, 1995, just a couple short months after Garcia passed at 53, which many people saw coming for many years. Shannon, stolen from us. Blind Melon, one of my all-time favorite bands. Shannon Hoon was my hero. I saw a lot of myself in him back then as a kid and even today. His words, his voice, his songs have touched my life since 1993 when I got the first album, when I saw the No Rain video. And they only have 3 albums with Shannon, and all 3 of them are incredible. But I have one favorite song, and it's called Mouthful of Cavities, with special guest Jenna Krause on auxiliary vocals. It was recorded in New Orleans at Kingsway Studios. And it is the quintessential Shannon Hoon Blind Melon song for this guy right here. And truly one of my favorite songs, not just the Blind Melon, but any artist ever. If there was a mixtape cassette to my life, it would be on it. So that's the Vibe Junkie Jam for episode 63, bringing 2022 into port. So grateful for everybody who tunes into the show, who shows me love, who shares the program, who reads my work, or just loves on me from afar. Thank you to my wife, Alicia, to all my incredible friends, to my amazing mom who listens to the show. Love you, Wormsy. And yeah, with that, we'll say goodbye, God bless, and we'll see you next year. Yes, indeedy.
Listen, man, I got the window open. Hear the cats? Listen. Mouthful of cavities, and your soul's a bowl of jokes. And every day you remind me how I'm desperately in need. See, I got a lot of fiends around, and they're peeking through nothing new. And they see you. They see everything you do. See everything on the inside out. Oh, Sunday blues. 'Cause one of these days this will die. So me and so will you. I write a letter to a friend of mine. I tell him how much I used to love to watch him smile. See, I haven't seen him smile in a little while. Haven't seen him smile in a little while.